Quit politicking and come on up.
Yes, sir.
Phones.
Let me welcome you to the June 8th Davidson County Board of Commissioner meeting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for showing interest in being here with us tonight. Commissioner Shell, are you on?
I am.
He is.
Okay, hi.
I'm just sort of going to leave this sit here for a minute to see if Commissioner Yates comes on.
Okay, and we're expecting Commissioner Yates to come home, but should we go ahead and excuse him in case?
Mr. Fry?
Mr. Fry?
You may want to delay
Okay.
that for just a few moments.
Okay, delay that, okay. Okay, Commissioner McClure will lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
Madam Chair, we need to do a roll call for the meeting first.
Oh, yes, we do, thank you.
And let me get Commissioner Shell moved over here. Okay.
Okay,
Commissioner Elliott,
Here.
Commissioner McClure,
Yeah.
Commissioner Shell,
Present.
Commissioner Shores,
Here.
Commissioner Truill,
Here.
Vice Chair Yates is absent. Chair Watford.
here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now we're ready.
Did you want to say anything else? I don't think so. Okay, Commissioner McClure will now lead us in the invocation and pledge.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you have given to us as individuals and our county. We ask, Lord, that you would keep your hand on our county and let us prosper as we prospered in the past. And Lord, we have make decisions this evening. Help us, Lord, to get the discernment that you promised to us and be able to make decisions that would be favorable in your eyes. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
I'd like to also recognize so very many of you. I probably won't remember everybody, so I'm going to say thank you for being here. I see department chairs and I see members of boards and friends, and I appreciate you being here. I'd like to recognize Diana Sullivan of the Thomasville Chamber, who is scheduled to be the Council of Chambers representative, and she is here. Thank you for being here with us. If you are interested in speaking tonight at public address, please register if you will, if you have not already done that. For the adoption of the agenda, we're expecting a lengthy public hearing tonight, so I'm requesting that we move them to follow the deliberation agenda. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, no changes. I make a motion we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you.
Second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McClure and Mr. Shores. We'll have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Elliott,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Shell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shores,
Yes.
Commissioner Truill,
Yes.
Vice Chair Yates will be a yes since he is not here yet. Chair Watford.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That vote carries by that motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Martin, is anyone registered to speak?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, we have one person registered.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we have Joan March. If you will come forward. State your name and address, please.
Joan March, 3132 Old US Highway 52, Lexington, 27295.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Mhm.
Just wanted to ask if there was any plans or anything in the works for Mitch Harb's burned buildings. because it's such an eyesore to, coming into Lexington, it's a major road, I think, and, you know, it's been standing there for quite a long time. Even before it was burned, it was pretty much an eyesore, but it's even more an eyesore now. So I just wanted to see if there was anything going on or any plans to take it down.
City. And it's in the city, and
It's in the city, Mr. McClure says.
I was told it was.
It is not, it's in the county.
Is it? Is it, Mr. Shell?
It is in the county, and
the harm place.
last I heard from Chuck, we were waiting on DOT to take care of that because that was in that, projected corridor that they were utilizing. And Chuck, have you got any more on that?
I think I'm looking at Scott here because I know that he has been involved with that, and he has been working with one of the staff in my office on that. And so I think we may be best to have you talk directly with him, either following your presentation here or first thing tomorrow, because I think he can give you the best update as to where we are on that. There is some awareness of that, and he can let you know some of the challenges that we've been dealing with on that.
And Ms. March, and normally we don't have a discussion at the public hearing. It's your opportunity to share with us, you know, your feelings, and but I appreciate what Mr. Fry says, and Mr. Lemon will be glad to speak with you.
Okay, all right.
Great question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So since that's all we have, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
at this point, if Commissioner Yates has
Commissioner
not
Yates is
joined
not on
us,
the line yet.
Okay,
it may be appropriate to consider excusing him.
okay. Do I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Yates tonight?
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Mr. Elliott and Mr. Shores. Debbie will do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Elliott,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Shell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shores,
Yes.
Commissioner Truul.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
All right. Items for deliberation tonight. We have the adoption of the Davidson County
Madam Chair, we need to do the consent agenda.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Did I skip right over
We
it?
knocked you out of it.
yes, you did. Okay. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda? Y'all probably think I don't know what I'm doing, but I really do. For discussion,
If not, motion to approve.
motion to approve from Commissioner Truul and McClure. Roll call vote?
Commissioner Elliott,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Shell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shores,
Yes.
Commissioner Truul,
Yes.
Chair Watford.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
All right, now we'll go on to deliberation. We now have the adoption of the Davidson County 21-22 fiscal year budget, and Mr. Smith will lead this off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's that time of the year where it's time to approve probably the biggest local legislation you guys do every year, the adoption of the Davidson County budget for next fiscal year, 2022. We've gone through the process of me submitting it to you all. We've taken public comments. We had a work session last Thursday where we had a pretty lively discussion about some issues related to the budget. Those have been, at that point we left, though no more changes after the meeting, and the attachment there you have are those same attachments as you had before you Thursday with no other additional changes. So staff did have some other smaller changes we walked through last Thursday. So, Madam Chair, I turn it over to you. I have nothing further related to the budget.
Any comments at all?
I do. I have a couple.
Okay.
One is a question. So the pay studies that happened this year in due for like maintenance and those other departments, those have already been handled. Is that being applied to this year's budget?
They've gotten off cycle. We've done them in August in the last 2 years, so I'm not going to break the
That's
mojo
right.
trend of that. You'll be seeing those again in August for
Gotcha.
year 3, which is the final year. I'm not sure where maintenance was in the process. I believe they may have been last year. What you're gonna see in year 3 is largely department heads for the most part. But we've gotten those off cycle, but the budget does have funds included to handle that and the compression stuff we got approved with the sheriff's department.
Okay. The second thing is so the money that we were talking about that could be spent for sewer or possibly funding, the grant process and the rescue squads and all that, that's not in this.
Nothing with the rescue squads has changed. There's nothing, the funding that was in there before when it got proposed, that's the way it is now. The federal money that we're getting for sewer and stuff, that's sitting in what I call a light-to-date account. It's not being part of the general fund. We're not gonna put it in the general fund. We're gonna treat it as a special revenue, just like we did the first CRF money. It's here, but not been appropriated yet. So there's a distinction. In other words, it's sitting in a bank account, but not ready we'll bring it to the board for a proper approval for a budget. As we get further down the road and get either projects we're gonna spend it on, we're still, again, eyeballing the things with the school, et cetera. So nothing has been budgeted for those funds yet.
So, okay, so those funds are sitting there at that appropriate time.
They'll come to the board off-site.
Anybody would come to barter for those funds, okay.
Right.
We had some rescue squad members here that wanted to speak about those funds, and I didn't want them to waste their time if it was gonna be at a different time frame down the line.
It'll have to come before the board.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? I believe, Mr. McClure?
Make a motion, we approve the budget.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Shores. We'll do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Elliott?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Shell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shores?
Yes.
Commissioner Toole?
Yes.
Chair Watford?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Okay. We'll move on. We have an update by Keep Davidson County Beautiful. I'll call on Mandy Kaiser and Chris Phelps to lead this off. And welcome to our meeting.
Thank you so much. And if it's okay, I would like to call our volunteers up. Is that okay if they come up here
That'd
as
be
well?
all right.
Absolutely.
All right.
That'd be all right.
Come on up, guys.
Mhm.
3 minutes.
This is a huge team effort, so I want to make sure they're recognized. I really want to thank you guys for having us tonight and putting us on the agenda. Commissioners and Madam Chair, thank you so much. And the reason why we came tonight was to simply say thank you. And that's really the only reason. We just want y'all to know how much it means to us for the funding that you give us. I would also like to tell you that we appreciate your support for the Tourism Recreation Investment Partnership Board as well. Without both of these boards, we wouldn't be able to accomplish what we are accomplishing right now. And we're going to share a little bit about that. So I'm Mandy Kaiser. I'm a committee member for Keep Davidson County Beautiful, and I'm also the president of the Tourism Recreation Investment Partnership Board. I'm going to introduce the volunteers, and I was hoping Edgar would be here, but is he here?
Mm-hmm.
Our past president was hopefully was going to make it, but we have Chris, was the executive director of the Tourism Board, Chris Phelps. And we have behind me here, let me see everybody. Y'all can hear me. I have Rain Brown. These are our volunteers, and without these folks, it would not be possible, the things that we do and all the things that we do. So they're really the backbone to this committee and organization. So Rain Brown, she's in the northern Davidson area. I have Adina Bradley, western Davidson area. Melanie Edge, northern Davidson. John March, northern Davidson. I have Jane Matthews, southern Davidson County, and Doug Holtzman, southern Davidson County as well. So these, if you don't mind, if we could clap for them, I would really appreciate it, because they are amazing.
Absolutely.
We love them so much.
We'll be back.
Sure, we've seen you all on the road.
Yeah,
and at a lot of Saturdays, and we thank you for that very much.
Thursdays or pop-ups yet?
Every Thursday.
Some good things happening, and we hope that you see the value and the benefit and the growth within these groups and within Davidson County. We hope you see that. If you don't have a social media account, let me know. I'm happy to add you to our email list, but I provide pictures, and we do a lot of work, and it's all volunteer-based, so we appreciate it very much. All the support you guys have given us has been what we've used that money for, is to purchase grabbers, trash grabbers, bag openers, T-shirts. What am I missing? bags, if we run out, DOT sometimes runs out of bags. So best, we have signs for hopefully folks will slow down when we're on the side of the road, because unfortunately they do not always do that. And, it's very dangerous, so.
Yes.
But, face mask, lots of things, lots of cool things. Hand sanitizer, gloves. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about Keep Davidson County Beautiful. We are our affiliate of Keep America Beautiful. There are lots of things that we are required to do to keep that affiliation. A few of those things are litter index. Annually, we go around and basically index the county on the roads that are the worst. Is it 1 to 4, Chris? So there's a scale from 1 to 4, and we basically rank those roads in regards to how bad they are as far as litter goes. We do periodic reporting, so the number of trash bags that we pick up, the number of hours that we volunteer and things like that. Of course, we have our cleanups, and we also do education as well. So if you ever attend our meetings, you'll see that we do education around awareness, recycling. There's lots of different things we do. So let's see here. We do have monthly meetings. And I was hoping that we have a few volunteers that every single week they help us. They weren't able to make it tonight, but we do pop-up cleanups. Those are random cleanups that we just schedule randomly, and then we have quarterly cleanups and sometimes monthly cleanups that are scheduled more in advance. But we do have a crew of ladies and gentlemen that's not here tonight that do Thursday morning pop-ups from 9:30 to typically around 11. Does that sound right? So this is our, let's see here. I don't know, who is it? So I know we have a select few, but it's usually 4 to 5 people on Thursdays. And we actually clean up in the city as well. So we don't discriminate. If it's in the county, we're going to help clean it up. We typically take, basically, if we have some folks that are really concerned about a certain roadway, then we focus on that roadway. I had actually, Debbie sent me an email from a citizen in Thomasville, and that was probably about 2 months ago, maybe. So we took care of that. Within about 2-week period, we went and cleaned out that area. All right. And then the last thing I want to just share is there's a cleanup this weekend. What are we calling that one?
It's on the Abbott's Creek. We're cleaning up the Abbott's Creek from Finch Park down to Hydrant.
So there's actually about, is it 4 or 5 organizations or like committee groups?
We're partnering with the local community down there that have adopted Highway 47 over Sheets and Bond, as well as the Three Rivers Land Trust, Title Club, the Three Rivers Land Trust, Yadkin Chapter, and the Yadkin River Keepers. So there's several groups that we partner with. We don't just stick to ourselves. We want to spread the love, and we also are in the works with it's a beautification committee in Thomasville. So, and Denton also has a beautification committee. So we've done our research and we've done a lot of work with some other folks, and we just really think that it's important to partner with those that are already involved. We also are going to be partnering with High Rock Lake Clean Sweep in the fall. So that's another event. And like I said, we have our pop-ups that we do on a regular basis. And the very last thing, unless anybody has anything else. Anybody? Okay. I didn't want to just be taking over the microphone here. We also wanted to talk a little about Creek Week and ask, and I'm not exactly sure, Proclamation? Yeah, Proclamation to support Creek Week.
Yep.
Got it.
So we super excited about our Proclamation. Creek Week is in August, the end of August. We are doing that from an education standpoint, awareness standpoint. We'll have tents set up. It's for a whole week. We'll be doing events that week, but we'll have a specific day, that one of those weekends that we education, like I said, tents set up down at the Yadkin River Park. Am I correct in saying that?
And throughout the county, yeah. It'll be a week long of countywide events, trying to get folks out in their own community, clean up the waterways, and making folks understand, or educating folks to understand how the waterways are our most important asset from so many different levels here in Davidson County. All of them flow to our western border that's 73 miles of the Yadkin River, and High Rock Lake, which is one of our biggest tourism draws, as well as one of our greatest tax revenue sources. So we've got to protect what takes care of us.
So we're excited about that. We are going to partner with Rowan County, keep Rowan County beautiful.
Yeah, it's in conjunction with Rowan County's Creek Week, so we're going to make it a river, across the river effort, the week of August 21st.
Thank you, and if y'all will just stay right there, I'm gonna read the proclamation.
much.
And then we'll take some pictures, all right?
Could I say one thing, Madam Chair? Go ahead.
Okay, after this,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
call on you.
go ahead and do.
Okay, August the 21st through the 28th, 2021 has been designated as Creek Week in Davidson County. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of Davidson County, as representative public entity, acknowledges the importance of water quality and water supply as an essential resource for achieving and maintaining community health, economic stability, and long-term community prosperity. And whereas access to clean waterways, creeks, streams, rivers, and lakes for recreational, scenic, agricultural, and economic development purposes is a fundamental component of community life. And whereas Davidson County aspires to the continued health and economic welfare of its citizens who value clean water for domestic consumption, agricultural use, and as an industrial resource. And whereas Davidson County acknowledges the importance of good stewardship and proper management of water resources through thoughtful land development, deliberate and ongoing efforts to reduce sources of pollution, and responsible consumption. And whereas Keep Davidson County Beautiful, along with a variety of public agencies, advocacy groups, environmental educators, and citizens have organized and intend to implement a week-long celebration to promote water quality, conservation, and general awareness of the indispensable nature of clean water through education and proactive community engagement. Now, therefore, the Board of Commissioners of Davidson County does hereby adopt this proclamation recognizing Creek Week in Davidson County, North Carolina for the week of August 21st through 28th, 2021, and encourages all citizens to participate in activities and programs to address the important issues impacting water quality and water supply, adopted this the 8th day of June, 2021. And I will share a copy of this with you in just a moment. I would like to say thank you on behalf of the commissioners for what you do. Get out there and tell your friends, and I know Mandy works hard to get the information out, and we all need to get involved in this in some small ways, even if it's only every once in a while. I enjoy being on the trip board. I've seen all of these things, balloon in the past few years, and it's just amazing that we have this great group of volunteers to do this kind of work, and I thank you. Commissioner Elliott?
I would like to echo what Madam Chair has said, just making some of the notes. This is volunteer, and we have a big issue with trash in Davidson County. Yeah. Y'all are getting out there and making our communities beautiful again, and it just is something that when Lee brought this forward, and he was a champion. He was a champion for this group and the things that y'all are doing. There was a unanimous vote. Every commissioner was absolutely, unequivocally behind this 100%. We thank you. The education part of it is something that I would like to be a little bit more involved in, because I'm all about the youth and the awards and finding people that are doing good and rewarding them for that. And that's one thing that every commissioner up here was in agreement that, recognitions like this is where it starts. So if you see people out there that are doing the right thing, that are helping you out, let Madam Chair know, let the commissioners know, so we can bring them in and give them a pat on the back. But tonight is your pat on the back, and I really do appreciate it.
We love doing it.
Madam Chair, if I may. Thank you.
You're next.
I'm just gonna make a motion. Mandy, I too would like to thank you and your group, but I have a couple questions. Number one, have you got any idea about how many people volunteer to help you guys? Just a ballpark number?
I mean, you always have a core group of people, and they're here. There's some that are not here, but I would say there's approximately like 30.
30?
I would love to see that grow. We honestly, so whenever you're speaking about the meeting that y'all had and everybody was, on board, and I hate that Todd, or Mr. Yates isn't here, because he was just such a big advocate, and he is a big advocate of this group. But our the biggest need that we have is a volunteer coordinator, truthfully. And that is a bear of a job, I can promise you. I try to do my very best, working full-time and have children, and, I try to do my very, very best to get the information out weekly in an email, and I do that, but, it would be amazing for us to have a coordinator that would be able to call Boy Scout troops and, organizations or community service folks that we can pull in and grow that volunteer base to a larger number. Because truthfully, we can go out, and these ladies, there's four typically, that clean up like Toots Road. I'll give you an example. It took them 4 weeks to do that road because it was so bad, and there was some dump sites there.
We only did part of it.
Yeah.
We never.
And, I mean, I'm talking about household trash and things like that. And so, I say that to say that if we had more volunteers, then it would take 4 weeks.
So that's my second question. So if someone, since we're live and people online are watching and everything else, and these are recorded, if someone wanted to be that volunteer position, or they wanted to join you, how would they go about doing that? Do you guys have a website?
We have a Facebook page, and you can sign up on the Facebook page or share your email address with us, and that gives you, we would include you in the weekly email to get the information out to you. We also do Facebook events, of course, and we've just found that that's our biggest drive there. So we don't have a website, but that's been we've reached a lot of people on Facebook, and so that's how we get the information out to folks on Facebook.
Madam Chair, and maybe this is something the manager can answer, but is there, Mr. Casey, Mr. Smith, is there a way we can maybe put a link to their social media on our website? Is that allowable, or?
Jason may be able to do it off the county's Facebook thing as well.
Yeah, I could share it through the county Facebook.
Okay, I think that would be great, and it would help these folks out as well. Thank you, guys. We really do appreciate it.
See our Facebook post about what we're pulling out of the woods and coming off the roads, because that's really revealing. But please know that
Madam.
I'm sorry. But we'll accept an hour, a day, or whatever, you know.
It's
Yes.
our fan, Commissioner Shell.
Go ahead, Steve.
Commissioner Shell, go ahead.
What do you, Chris, Mandy, one of you, what do you do with the trash when you pick it up?
So it depends on where it's located. DOT picks it up for us. So we basically shoot them an email either the same day or the next day, and they'll pick up that trash, and they'll pick up bags or any kind of debris, tires, whatever, mattresses. We've had all kinds of stuff. But
you don't carry anything to the dump?
We do.
We do, yeah. Our water-based cleanups, we have to haul.
Are you charged for that when you take something to the dump?
Yes, sir, we are.
We need to do something about that, guys.
We can fix that.
We need to do something about it. That's not their trash. They're out there doing it on behalf of the citizens of Davidson County, and we surely don't need to be charging them at the dump for bringing that stuff in.
For, the money we use is from our Designated fortune.
Yeah.
Essentially our pay for it.
We try to manage it, keep it.
Something to think about, and something that I think we need to look at, Casey, and talk with Charlie about. And there ought to be something we can do to eliminate that burden on them. They don't need to be picking it up and then having to pay on top of everything to deliver the trash to the dump when they're doing it on our behalf and every other citizen's behalf. And I commend them. And it's remarkable to see a group of people come together like this and work to make things more beautiful for Davidson County. And I think it's something we need to look at seriously.
Commissioner McClure?
I know they definitely need the signs out there. There was a tire on Highway 52, and I stopped in my pickup truck, and I got as far off the road as I could. And man, they were just honking as they went by, and they ain't slowed down not one bit.
It's dangerous.
Yes, yeah.
Really
Be
appreciate
careful.
what y'all do.
Please be careful.
Appreciate it.
Okay. I think I have a motion from Commissioner True.
I just want to say that, reiterate what she said. Todd Yates did really stimulate us all on this project, and I want to just recognize him publicly for that, and to make a motion that we approve this proposal.
Proclamation. Okay, I have a motion for the proclamation. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. McClure. We'll have a roll call vote, and then we'll take a picture.
Commissioner Elliott?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Shell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shores,
Yes.
Commissioner Truul,
Yes.
Chair Watford.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Ms. Harris will probably try to take a picture for us.
Get everybody in the center now.
All this crap down there. We need to talk to Charlie. Find out what we're talking about.
I think somebody else, I'll let Ross respond.
1, 2, 3. I'll do one more. 1, 2, 3. Good. Maybe I'll send those to you.
They could at least gave us a stool to stand on.
Right.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Betty, good to see you.
I guess I'll see you tomorrow night.
You still gonna run for commissioner?
Good luck to you.
That's one of those feel-good things.
It's great.
Great. All right, next we have a designation for the voting delegate to the 2021 Ncacc Annual Conference. Ms. Harris will lead this off.
This is something that we do every year about this time. We've got 4 commissioners who have registered to go to Wilmington in August. And it is the 4 sitting right here on the right side of the bench. So it would be up to y'all to decide who is going to be the voting delegate and who's going to be the alternate.
So may I have a nomination for a voting delegate?
Madam Chair.
Okay, which one's going?
Make a motion that Commissioner Shores makes the motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that Commissioner McClure be our voting delegate.
I happily second that.
And we also need an alternate as well.
I make a motion that Commissioner Shores is the alternate.
Okay.
And we have a second for that, so, all in favor?
Combine that as a motion for
Yes,
those?
it's
Okay.
combined motion, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Elliott?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Shell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shores?
Yes.
Commissioner Truul?
Yes.
Chair Watford?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0. I will get those forms filled out and get them sent in.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to public hearing. We have a rezoning request by Arden Homes Milk Roads in Arcadia Township containing 48.9 more or less acres from RA3 to MXR. I declare the public hearing open. Mr. Leonard will introduce this application. If Mr. Rhodes is here, if he will come forward and explain the request after Mr. Leonard introduces the request, okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the Commissioners, we have one public hearing tonight for a rezoning request. Let's see if I can, great. This is going to be for a development, inside of a development somewhat, and this is an MXR request that you're familiar with. I want to read the legal, and then I'm going to go into some extensive background research, if I may, just spend a few time to try to explain this. The legal says that this is a request by Milt Roads to rezone 48.9 acres, more or less, in the Arcadia Township, Tax Map 1, Lot 5. Said property is located on the east side of Old Scott Farm Road, directly across from the Rolling Brook Court intersection. Rezoning is requested to change from that of RA3, Rural Agricultural District, to that of MXR, Mixed Use Residential District. You can, sorry.
No, you're fine. Joel pulled it up because I knew I was pulling it up on the television.
So
You might be able to bounce it off there.
can I control it through the TV?
You're controlling the TV.
That's fine. I think I can see it. Okay.
So.
All right, great. Well, you can see on your screen right now, this is the site that's highlighted in yellow is the 48.9 acres that is being requested to change from RA3 to MXR. You'll also notice that there's some other development already there, and if I can point, the one thing I noticed is the pointer won't show up on the TV, so I'll go over to the screen up here if I may. You'll notice that this is a development that's already been in existence, and this is part of what we call Meadow Field. It came to us back in around 2006 as a planned development housing, which is very similar to an MXR, and it was approved right before the economic recession, and it's just recently been completed and finished. Arden Homes was connected to that particular development, and they had an option to purchase the land that is before you tonight from a Martha West who's wanting to sell it. They came to my office and said, we're wanting to develop this property since we are completed with Meadow Field. And we wanted to see what the staff would feel about as far as the development goes. We know what we want to do. And in our discussions, I asked them for the continuity of the development to stay within the same developmental pattern that you'll see here. And I have a couple of better pictures later on that I'm going to show you to try to keep the continuity. Because right now under the RA3 zoning, they could do just a traditional half-acre lot subdivision in there because Old Scott Farm Road, which they built, has now been turned over to the public, to the state. It's a public road maintained by the state. So they could do just a traditional subdivision going through our planning board for their approval, each with half-acre lots throughout the developable area. Instead, I asked them to seek the rezoning to the MXR to try to keep it in the same pattern. I want to go to a couple pictures here before I can Joel, I'm going to go to something like that right there. And this shows you the latest. We have some new aerial photography. I don't know if Joel can see. It's about 3 more clicks.
Couple more clicks.
2 more clicks there. There you go. This is the latest aerial photograph that we have, and you'll see that Meadowfield is completed. You have what we call twin homes that have been developed in this called Meadowfield View. It's right across from the road from the amenities, which is a swimming pool, for the development. You'll also see where Rolling Brook Court is located on Old Scott Farm Road, and this proposed development is going to just be an extension of that into the pine thickets of this property. As I go one more, Joel, to show you a northern view, you'll see that this property is completely in the pines, and primarily the development is going to be taking place in this area. Now, I'm going to go back to the actual plan. I'm going to go back 2 clicks, Joel, and to the actual site plan. And in this plan, we have 74 potential home sites as... Okay. As you see on the screen, there's 74 planned homes, patterned similar to what Meadowfield View was. They're twin homes. Now, this development, when I spoke to the developer, I wanted it to be a part of Meadowfield, but he indicated that he wasn't going to be a part of Meadowfield, but we agreed that the Homeowners Association bylaws and restrictions would be similar. So they took the bylaws and restrictions of Meadowfield View and copied them so that the rules of this section, which will be a brand new development, would be similar as the existing development. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Rhodes to let him explain his site plan to you, and I'd be welcome to answer any question that you may have. There may be some folks here from the neighborhood that would like to speak as well. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have, but I'll stop right there and let Mr. Rhodes continue.
Come on, Mr. Rhodes.
Good evening. Milt Rhodes, 1134 Parish Street in Greensboro. That's my home address. I work for PM Development, Arden Homes, 11 Brookstown Avenue, Winston-Salem. Thank you for having me tonight, Scott. Thanks for the introduction and explanation of some of how we got to where we are tonight. I'll probably step away from the podium to point at things on the screen over there.
We'll give this up.
You know, this project, I haven't been with the company since Meadowfield started. I'm about 7 years in this summer. And I remember hearing about Meadowfield from my first day in the company, being a pre-recession project, working through some really tough times as one of the builders that we had recruited to come to the site left, and what were we to do with it? It took us a while to figure it out, and we are indeed just about done. And then Mark Falk, who is representing Ms. West, came to us and said, you know, that property that is next to Meadow Field, y'all would be perfect to help her out with figuring out what to do with this, for all intents and purposes, landlocked piece of property. And we had a successful run of working through Meadow Field View over a faster pace than we expected, and said that would be a wonderful product, a wonderful home type to look at on the opposite side of Old Scott Farm Road. It shares an intersection, a very similar customer type that would fit in that program. And fortunately, there was enough land on the south side of the creek that we could develop a economical project and not have to maximize the development of the whole site. And so we put together a plan with a similar home type, limiting our exposed area as much as possible to work through the process and to come before Planning Board. We had 2 meetings with the Planning Board, worked with them on a favorable recommendation to get to you. And I'm pleased that we have that opportunity tonight to pitch our case to you. One of the things that we learned during the Planning Board deliberations and working with Scott is the wish to include as part of our project a specific amenity area and some specific language about where that might be, and I think that helped our plan a little bit. It created a spot. There's a natural spot for it in the plan, sort of midway in the project. They gave us a location for something they require us to do now as developers, is to provide mail services. We have to build a centralized box unit place for folks to go get their mail, and because of certain restrictions, we also have to provide parking for them to do so now. And so this gave us a good location to put some kind of amenity into the project. With 74 units, you're going to want to have something, whether it be a park or a gazebo or an active amenity or a passive amenity. We don't know yet, but we know it needs something. And as we work through the design, Brent Cockram is our engineer with Fleming Engineering, and we learn more about the site, that gets programmed more specifically. But by sticking it here, it's able to serve folks coming in or leaving, but also connecting it via walkway, via mid-block passage. It gives us a chance to serve the other street, letting folks actually get there on foot and enjoy being in their neighborhood. One of the things we learned during the process was the folks that lived in the Meadow Field Trace portion of Meadow Field like their hillside and their trees that grow on their hillside. And they asked us about how we can be more sensitive to their boundary. That's this boundary right here on the southernmost portion of the site. And so as a result of these discussions, we worked to shift the project north while still staying clear of the open space area at the creek, Miller Creek, further to the north. And Brent, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we average about 90 feet off of our property line with the closest house, which provides not only an ample spot for a vegetative buffer, but given that it sits higher up on the hill than they, it also helps to protect some sight lines into this new development. So I think that was a good thing that we learned during the planning process. We worked with the Master Association through council to come up with a solution for access so that this landlocked parcel was not landlocked any longer. And because we're still declarant in the Meadow Field subdivision, we were able to work with an easement with the DOT to get access through a driveway permit to the site, opening it up without having to go through condemnation or other kind of proceedings to get to it. So in all, since we first met, January-ish, I think, to begin, I think we put together a decent project. Again, we're under the minimum standards for development for the low density requirement, low density standards here. And I think we've come up with a decent plan. I'll take some questions if you have any.
Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. Rose, what kind of drop have you got from your development that's existing to what's your new development?
Are you talking about from here to here, from here to here?
Yes, to the right there.
Here?
Yeah.
It's about 10 feet? About 10 feet.
Have you taken into consideration any kind of runoff from that, or what it's gonna do to these homes, or?
We have, and Brent, step in if you need to. As we expect to put the grading plan together for this property, the grading will start somewhere in here and fall this way, so that the water generated on the developed portion of the site will not compound the water challenges going back to the south. So everything grades this way.
Okay, so it also won't create any problems for the new homes that's being built as well as the existing homes that's already there, is that correct?
Right. Brent Cochran, Fleming Engineering, 8518 Triad Drive.
Yes, sir.
So the drainage that is currently going there, we will either catch by either overland conveyance ditches, swells with the grading, or we're also going to use storm sewer. We'll place yard animal boxes as needed, capture that, and we'll push the water towards Miller Creek is the intent with the plan, and to not compound any issues that may be in Meadow Field Trace.
Can I add to that, because that's a great question, and of course every development now we're looking more intensely at stormwater issues than we ever have before. And if you look at the contour lines of the topography of this property right now, Joel, if I could have you put the screen, I can't use my pointer on that, the site plan. I'm wanting to point to it if I can. This will be I don't know the number. Yes, I do. 3. The third slide. I'm sorry. If you look at just the topography now, most of what is right in here does flow back toward this portion. From here over, it runs very steep toward the creek, and they're going to leave a tree line right here. They're not going to touch anything from this point all the way in. But right now, once they clear these trees out, this does have a slight slope back towards here. So what they were mentioning too is their grading plan. When they go to the state of North Carolina, they're going to have to show the state of how they're grading their property to divert the water away from that dangerous area. So when they preserve the tree line here as much as they can, and they start cutting into grading, they will have to prove to the state that that will be diverted this way. That's the goal. The second thing I want to make the board aware of is the state of North Carolina, unlike they have done in the past, they've opened up another branch of regulations that deals with just storm water. And they don't do the whole county, but they do a large portion of the northern part of Davidson County. So when this property is being graded, it will not only stop on the desk of the erosion control specialist, but they will forward that on to do a stormwater analysis to make sure that what they're doing is not increasing the problem that some of the residents out here are already saying that they're experiencing, because they are lower than this property. So we're relying heavily on what the state will do, and I personally will try to stay in touch with the state to make sure they're monitoring what happens on this property.
So Scott, I may have misunderstood. The existing is lower than what's the new, or it's higher?
The existing should be lower. It is lower over here. The people that are living here, they're lower than this property here. Mm-hmm. And the high point is right in there, and it gradually right now flows this way, which may cause some of their problems. But when they start grading, they're going to have to prove to the state that they're going to reverse that back towards the creek. And that's our hope, and what we're hoping the state will make them do. Because there's no doubt that when you have the thickness of the pine trees there, when they start leaving, I get worried.
Right.
I get worried. So I want to make sure that the state is monitoring them once they start timbering this track.
So we are going to have some assurances that some of the things that has come before us is not gonna happen, or we're not
I
gonna
can't do that. I wish I could. All I can tell you is that in the past, it never went through the level of regulation that this one is getting ready to go through. Those past developments that are causing our problems that we're still dealing with only went through erosion control. They cleared all the trees and the water started rolling down into the existing neighborhood. Same scenario that you're looking at here. So I'm worried about it, you're worried about it, and all I can say is that there's a secondary level of the state control that the first one didn't have that I'm trusting in. But I cannot sit here and guarantee that there won't be stormwater issues. I can't guarantee that.
Lee and Commissioner Shores, I'd just like to thank y'all for looking at this. You know, reading the minutes from the planning board, they kind of put y'all through the ringer talking about this same topic and talking about the flooding, and you know, there are concerns. I share Ms. Brown's concerns with the neighbors around there that, you know, deal with flooding now. But I am a little bit more encouraged that there is that standard to meet. And I think that's what got the planning board through to a unanimous vote to approve. But, you know, we have people right now that we're dealing with that a neighboring development's moved in, and every time it rains, it floods their basement, it floods their neighbors, and we don't want that in this county. So, I appreciate y'all looking after it.
What are the sizes of the homes? It may have been in the package, but I don't remember.
Scott,
Thank you.
you're somewhere in the just under 2,500 square feet per unit.
Per unit.
Per unit.
And that's two.
That's the base floor that's the first base floor of the unit.
Okay.
Individual unit.
Individual units, okay.
Individual unit.
You know, most of the folks that have bought into Meadow Field View like the one-level living, but the home affords a second level through, you know, a bonus room, or a lot of folks have put in a bedroom and a bathroom in an upper level. So it grows the square footage a little bit, but the footprint is around that number that Brent mentioned.
Thank you.
Question. You say there's no way to really work on preventing the stormwater, but y'all have stated that you're gonna, in your grading, make it go downhill.
Yes.
Do you have actual plans that we can look at, or planning department can look at, how you're gonna do that?
So as we go through this process, we will work through the grading. We've done some preliminary grading analysis. To further talk about that, I have personally spoken with several people, won't go through names, but after all the planning board hearings, Arden has contracted me to come in and work on a solution for the folks that are downstream of this. I didn't know anything about it. Mill didn't know anything about it till we came to planning board. Since then, we have been on site. We have walked this site. We have looked at the issues down here. We walked and looked at all the pine trees that are sitting here, the grade and everything in that nature. So we're going to work on a solution. But as we mentioned in planning board, the best solution from my perspective is going to be a joint solution with this new development. Because this water is coming now. It's not just appearing out of nowhere. So there needs to be relief on the amount of water that's coming to this area, but also work done in that area to help provide a solution for it. So it's a joint solution to work on it.
Mr. Rose, is your group building the existing?
We have finished the last home in Meadow Field Trace.
But y'all built the existing one as well?
That's right. That's right. We finished the last one not terribly long ago.
Mr. Leonard, being new, I'm still...
Sure.
I understand our purpose here tonight is to either approve or deny the plan.
Yes.
In some things that we've been able to do, we've been able to put some stipulations in there. Are we allowed that tonight? Is that a you question, or is that a Mr. Fry?
I'll give a shot at it. You're not allowed to place conditions on this. What you're allowed to do in negotiation, that what you have in front of you is a master plan, and that master plan is telling you what they're going to do. Now, if you don't like the plan, you can let them know that you have problems with the plan, and if they want to say, well, we'll go back and table it, we'll bring it back or whatever. The planning board did that. But what I don't think you have the ability to do tonight is to say, we will approve you on the condition that you do this or that, because whatever on the plan when you vote on it is what we can require of them, nothing more. So if you don't like the master plan tonight, you have the right to table it until they do something with the master plan that's different. But once you vote on the plan, that's what we have to go with. I don't know if I answered that or not.
You did, sir. And gentlemen, I need you to understand something. It's nothing about you. It's things that's come before this board and the atrocities that we have seen our citizens having to go through. 5 and 6 feet of water in their backyard and all kinds of stuff getting flooded. We just want to make sure that these kinds of things, and when I first heard you, I thought the existing, what's to the right there, was elevated 10 feet.
No.
But then when I figured out it's actually depression of 10 feet, that, to me, that just, gives rise to the fact of now all this, if it's not done exactly the way you're saying, it's going to run right in these people's backyards, and then we're going to be right back here again having somebody tell us that it's our fault.
Right, which is administered, so all the stormwater is administered by the state. So the plans will come through the county, and then they'll also go through the state through the 2 levels that Scott mentioned. Then you have the next level of residential building code, which is administered by the county's inspectors. So drainage away from the units, things of that nature, is also handled at the inspector's code as well. So what we're talking about here is overall stormwater and drainage patterns. What we're talking about with the specific metal trace units are specific drainage patterns located in an isolated area behind their units. And so this overall plan, the state's looking at the overall plan. They're going to make sure that we're not sending water that's going over into the neighbors. And if they don't like it, they're going to, number one, turn the plan down, or number two, if there's an issue during construction, they're going to issue a notice of violation. Very good department. We work with them all the time. So it has a system of checks and balances. Right now, this is a zoning case with a zoning plan, and those checks and balances are in place post this approval.
Sir, I've got a quick question. In the minutes, and I'm just going to see if this brings back any recollection, but it says, Mr. Rhodes reported the developer's intention is to create a community which conforms with the surrounding housing types. He mentioned meeting with several of the homeowners in opposition of the request in regards to their water runoff. And he has ideas on ways to help with their flooding problems. Mr. Rose stated that the Arden Group has hired Fleming Engineering to assist them with their water flow for the new project to ensure the flooding does not happen again and the water runs in the direction intended, which is north to the side of the creek. But what I'm hearing from you is that it's a 2-part juncture. So you're going to handle your part, but they need to handle their part, and that's not what I'm hearing here.
No. What I said is I'm under contract for both parts.
Gotcha.
I'm under contract to solve 2 solutions. One is to prepare a stormwater plan for this master development. I am also under contract for the Meadow Field trace issue, yes, which is what we walked through and looked at all the fences, looked at all the drainage, looked at everything, and started that process. But that is not a week-long process.
But that plan has not been put in place yet.
No, and that plan is going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take some time to generate that plan and work through that plan with those property owners, which are on the adjacent tract.
And the Meadow Field Trace Association that actually owns the common area.
Yes.
That contributes to the drainage problem in that backyard. We just got some work to do around it.
How much new road service do you have in this?
I'm sorry?
How much new road surface do you have in here?
So in this particular project, I don't have the linear footage, directly right here. Give me 1 second.
You want my glasses?
No.
You don't have to look that up.
I'm
but
still in a state.
all the roads gonna be, state level, where state will take them over?
The state roads, it's intended to be state roads. We coordinated the driveway connection and a preliminary, plot of the plan with the NCDOT. They got the preliminary okay. Of course, you have to go through the formal permitting process, post this approval. The density of this project is, you've got a total tract acreage of 49 acres. You've got a total density here of 6.35 on 49 acres. Your maximum allowable density is 4 units per acre. This density is this is 1 unit per acre. This is a very low density project. But I will add, that does still not remove the obligation to adhere to the state stormwater manual.
To the obligation to what?
To adhere to the state stormwater regulations, both in land quality and stormwater control.
My biggest problem, sir, is if we approve this tonight, then y'all get to start and move forward. And one of the things I would like to see is, and I trust our planning and zoning department, to me, I'd put them up against anybody in the state. But I would like them to have an opportunity to look at your plan to get this water, because as Commissioner Elliott has already said, there's already issue there with water runoff. You've already got opposition there. You've already been hired by two different people to fix an existing problem and a potential problem.
Yes.
So
if I might try to address that, because Scott, and you help me as we work through the multi-stage approval process in Davidson County. The first stage is zoning here, because we are trying to do a compatible kind of project with the Meadow Field subdivision that's in place. Whereas if we just went with the base zoning in a different way without the zoning change, we might be moving along in a different process. So our first step was to do a zoning plan, a two-dimensional site plan that looked at form and bulk and density and meet state watershed restrictions, so that we can go to the next stage of design and engineering, which actually gets into how water flows, where water flows, grading, all those kinds of engineering items. We're really working in just a layout right now instead of a design. And the going into some specific engineering at this stage without even a zoning hearing, it's why it's not part of your normal process, is premature, because that opens up a whole different level of investment into a piece of property. And without a zoning assurance, folks aren't apt to do that kind of investment, because it does sort of change the ball game about trying to figure out a piece of property. Now, and I might take these practical matters a little differently, which is water's got to go downhill. It's got to get to the creek on the other side, and looking at the existing topography in order to get the plateau, in order to build the housing the way we've done it tightly instead of expanding out further onto the site. I'm just looking at it and saying, well, it's got to get cut down that way. It's got to be spread over that way. It's like we talked about. There's almost like a berm on the south side that for all intents and purposes and effectively blocks any water from heading that direction. That doesn't stop the water that's already going down the hill, that's in the trees. It's going down the hill already. That compounds that problem at the bottom of the hill. But if we can, by pushing the homes more north, like we've done here in this two-dimensional plan, it gives us room to further block surface water from heading that direction, south toward them, lets us capture it and pull it that way. That's what we think we know at this stage.
And what's the separation, Again, did you say 90 feet?
About an average of 90 feet. If I may, I've got a graphic here.
You're fine, you're fine.
So do you have a system right there, or are you running it back into the houses?
I'm sorry?
Is that like a system for drainage?
Storm sewer system, whether that's, overland flows, culverts,
You may be
things,
asking
ditches,
questions they
things of
can't
that
answer at
nature.
this stage.
Closed conduits,
The
culverts,
questions that
storm
you're
sewer
asking about
systems,
stormwater
it'll be a
runoff
combination of
per
all
time.
that,
Yeah.
which will be realized.
Just for clarification, I hate to interrupt you, Scott. At this point in time, Commissioners, I've got, and maybe y'all know this, but, I've got a question. In a standard rezoning like this, our limitation to our authority is right now. Once we approve this, that's it for us. So we either ask the tough questions now, or you sit back and you render the consequences after it's built. So am I correct with that?
You are correct, and that's the difficult part that lies with the board, especially now versus maybe in the past or even with our planning board who does typical subdivisions. What you're dealing with is a desired building plan. As Milt said, because they needed your approval to begin, they haven't done the engineering. They are assuming that they can get 74 units and they can build it the way they want it. That's their desire. But what you approve tonight is that plan, and they have the right to go after it. They can't do more, but they could do less if they find that they can't get that many. What we don't know is once the bulldozers start moving, that's when trust has to come in, that the regulations above us at the state level will do their job. But if they don't, then there's nothing that we can do because we don't have a local stormwater program that we can monitor. The only thing that we could possibly even look into is, I would have to go to our legal team, is whether we could hold up building permits until, anytime the state says you're in violation, then the county has the right to stop the building permit process, I believe. And that's where the only thing I can do as a staff member is stay in contact with the state, especially if I start hearing, seeing, or feeling that this stormwater is getting out of hand or are worried. If the state slaps a notice of violation on it, I think I have the power to go to the inspections director and say, can you hold these permits until they get back into state compliance? And that's the only thing I know that we can do from a county.
Thank you,
at
sir.
that point.
Mr. Fry, can you expound on that any? I mean, do we have any recourse whatsoever if we say yes today and, like Mr. Leonard said?
We're not gonna have any recourse through his office. And so I think that's the concern that he's sharing with you. And, one of the things we need to keep in mind is that this is purely a legislative decision. So the determination of whether you approve this or you don't approve it or you don't take any action at all is completely discretionary with the board. This is not like a special use permit where if there are certain standards that are met, there's an immediate right to being granted that special use permit. This is completely within your discretion. And so if you feel that there is additional information that would benefit you in determining whether you want to approve this zoning request, then you certainly have the authority to do that. You certainly, as Mr. Leonard said earlier, you could table this and make a suggestion to them if they want a favorable response to this, some additional information would be necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
My question would be, if we don't approve this, do you go forward at all?
There's always the use by right to do the RA3. To do the RA3, single family development.
Now, how many homes could you put in there?
With the stormwater pond, we could put several. Maximum, we could put several.
It's a watershed area that they could put one dwelling for every half acre. So with 48 acres, they could, 90 some lots, but they have the right to do that if the land will yield that. But they would go back to the planning board. It would never come back to this board. It would just settle with the planning board on a technical, if we meet your technical requirements of A, B, C, and D, then you must grant us this. I mean, it'll still go through the state, still go through stormwater, erosion control, all of that. What you're losing if you turn it down tonight, which is your discretion, and they decide to go back through the planning board just to do a typical subdivision, they'll still have to go through the same regulations, but what you're giving up is possibly some of the control that they are offering on a homeowners association, some of the continuity of the type of, they probably would not do this same type of development. They wouldn't be able to. Yeah. They would have to cut it up into single-family lots. So you would have more where you have just a regular single-family house and a yard and things like that. But they could certainly develop the property. They just would do it in a more traditional way.
Now that we solved the access problem, since it was landlocked before.
Right.
That would be something to consider.
And if they did the single-family homes, there would be really no way for this board to control stormwater runoff at all.
No, the state would still get involved.
Yeah, but this board wouldn't.
No, sir. No.
I'd just like to add one thing. It's a long time before bulldozers would start moving on this with the amount of engineering and review that would go through to get to the point of pulling a permit to go do any kind of land clearing. I don't know how many times we'd come through one of y'all's offices before we got that permit, and it would go through several reviews with different state authorities during that time period. It's a long time.
What will happen is if it's approved, whether it's tonight or in the future, once they start pushing dirt, doing their thing, once they get to a point where they feel like they have finished their road construction, their infrastructure's in the ground, they will come back to my office, and I will have to get letters of approval from the erosion control folks, stormwater folks. The DOT has to sign off on the plat that the road meets their restrictions. So there are levels of governmental agencies that'll get involved with this, but that's when it's all done. You know, there is no assurance outside of the state on the construction phase, which is always the worrisome phase.
The reason I brought up the single family is if we compare one against the other, we actually have more control for stormwater by approving this than we would by letting them go forward with single family, because there's no way of doing that. They don't have to come, it's already RA3, so they don't have to do a whole lot. So, no. I mean, they may have to comply with the state, but they don't have to comply with that.
My fear of the MXR versus the RA3 is, in order to get the number of homes that they want to get, if they do the RA3, they will most likely need to disturb more land than they are with this. Yeah. That's my fear. They're going to leave a lot of this land undisturbed in order to pack them in like you see them with 74 homes, which is similar to what's across the road. If they cut them into half-acre lots and still try to get 74 lots, I fear that a lot more of that land will be disturbed, and that adds to the stormwater complications.
Right. That's kind of what the point was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's hear whatever anybody else got to say too.
Do you?
Madam Chair, I have no further questions.
No further questions. Do you have any?
You don't do this, we're gonna slap your hand.
I'm sorry?
Well,
Say, you don't do this, we're gonna slap your hand.
It seems to me that your intent, from the way you spoke about being aware of the problem and trying to alleviate with the trees and disturbing less land, is the intent is to address the water issue.
I know that
I'm just saying, anybody can just say, oh yes, and then turn around and say, well, I got that, you know. Mm-hmm. But it seems that since you did speak to at the beginning quite clearly about that, that you have the intent to address, and that you were hired.
We've been tasked to solve that building problem.
Yes.
That building problem that occurred we've been tasked with figuring that out and solving it.
In addition, if our concern seems to be from the questions on the board about stormwater runoff, if that is indeed the question, we'd be better off approving this than disapproving it, and I would make that motion.
Madam Chair, I think Commissioner Shell had something he wanted to say.
Commissioner Shell, would you like to speak before we go forward?
Yeah, I was just interested in knowing, is that the Winston-Salem sewer?
Yes, Commissioner Shell, and I appreciate you bringing that up. This will be attaching itself to our sewer system with our agreement of the city of Winston. If approved tonight, they would be asking that the board also allocate 26,640 gallons per day of sewer. We were going to discuss that in our recommendation, but this is a perfect time to bring that up. And I have figures on what we have available and things like that with the sewer agreement. But they would be asking for 26,640 from our allocation with the city of Winston.
And you'll go over with us what we've got, correct?
I can do that now. We have 1.5 million gallons as an agreement. We have already used around 1.1 million on the permitted side. That means on paper, we have already allocated 1.1. That leaves us around 400,000 left. I have been on the phone with my counterpart up in the city of Winston, and he has agreed that they will allow us to reconcile the projects that have already completed. So I can take to the city 350,000 gallons of permitted allocation, reconcile that, and what we save, they will put it back into our, for lack of a better word, our sewer bank. And I believe if it follows suit with what most houses use in water, I can save 200,000 of that and put it back. Now, we've already used here, again, 1 million just on residential uses in the North Davidson area, and I can only take 350,000 of that at this time to reconcile. The rest of those projects have not been completed, so I cannot reconcile them. But I think I can bring 200,000 back.
You feel comfortable with that?
I do. Working with reconciliation with our agreement with Lexington has given me confidence knowing that Davidson Water, as our bill collector and all that, gives me a good idea to work from, and it seems like these cities do the same and that they accept those numbers. Most cities want to know the actual amount of flow going through the pipes because that's what triggers their plant expansions. So they're more than willing to listen to our numbers, and then they'll do their own, and if they agree to it, then we can get it back. I feel pretty confident with it. I don't know what the authorities in Winston will do. I can only talk to my person in Winston who does a similar thing, but he has authorities as well.
Still have a motion.
Yeah, I still have a motion on the floor.
Madam Chair, I think Mr. Truill had suggested earlier that there may be other people in the audience who wish to speak.
Yeah, I might have questions.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. We're there. Anyone in the audience like to address the board at this time? Thank you all. If we think of anything else, we'll come back to you. Anyone else in the audience like to speak on this matter? In favor of or opposition? Mr. Leonard, do you want to talk about the recommendation?
I will. It's quite an extensive recommendation. I won't read it. Instead, I'll sum it up in 3 points. The staff is going to recommend approval of this development for 3 things. Number 1 is we did want to continue the continuity of this development. When Meadow Field was completed, people that bought into this project of Meadow Field, they didn't know this section or this piece of property would be developed. But knowing that now it is, we certainly would like to produce the same product that is there. And without the MXR, we cannot guarantee that. That's number 1. Number 2 is the storm water. We always have concerns about this, and when I did look at the topography and those same pine trees that I remember from other projects, I did fear a little bit about it. But knowing that the state is looking at this and that an MXR traditionally disturbs less land than a typical subdivision, I feel better with the MXR. And then lastly, MXRs require homeowners associations, and they don't require amenity packages, but this developer has agreed to present an amenity package for the people that will live in this particular community. We always are looking for quality of life issues. I cannot guarantee an amenity package and rarely see one when you do a regular RA3 subdivision. This MXR opens the door for the common area and the amenities, whatever they may be. Now, I will tell you this by stating that this developer has not specified what type of amenity package he will offer for a reason. Normally, we see it. We see it on the master plan. You're going to have a walking trail. You're going to have a swimming pool, a playground. He's purposely left that open, and the reason he's explained that to us and the planning board was traditionally, or in the past, he's noticed as soon as he puts in an amenity, people move into the neighborhood, and that's not what they wanted. They didn't want to walk on a trail. They didn't want to have a playground. There's no kids in the neighborhood. So he has opened the door to where he will want to speak to the future homeowners and find out what they want, and then he has to produce it. The zoning ordinance under the MXR says that once you reach 50% capacity build out, you're required to have the amenities on the ground. And so we will be working with this developer to ensure that after he approaches 50%, what are you going to do? They may come back and say, we're not going to do anything but just have a grassy field. I can't hold him to anything more. That's another trust issue because it's not on that plan. And if the board says you want something concrete on that plan, now's the time to do it. But if you're open to what the developer says that, hey, I want to talk to my future homeowners, find out what they want, and then we'll build it, then that's what's presented to you tonight. So the third reason for the amenity package, the staff stands to recommend approval.
All right, any further discussion?
As he said, or if I understand it right, if it doesn't really help the old part of this, it's not gonna make it any worse. So
We've had examples of our own in past planned development communities where we've had homeowners come to us later on and said, can we do away with this walking trail? Nobody uses it. You know, why do we have to maintain this thing? And so we certainly understood when we heard that it's a trust issue. This development may wind up with no amenity at all except something on a map, just a common area. We're trusting that he's having to sell this product and that the people buying into this product are going to see that amenity and say, what can we do about this? And he's going to have to negotiate, and we're going to be willing to allow that to happen.
okay, but with storm water, I'm talking about too, with storm water, if it doesn't help the old section, it's not gonna help it or hurt it any worse than it is now.
We are hoping that that is correct because right now, we know where the water's coming from on the existing or the older section. And they're going to have to go in and they're going to cut the trees, which is the first scary part, but then they're going to have to grade it. And once they start grading it, what they're going to show the state is that they're going to take that water and divert it back to the north near the creek. Now, if that doesn't happen, if the state says, well, we never made them do that, then it could exacerbate the problem. That's the trust we're holding with the state. The state's purpose in stormwater is to make sure they don't add to the problems that already exist. And I'm not an engineer, but I will definitely stay with the state to find out, pay attention to this. You know, dog these guys. Pay attention to it. That's all I can do.
Okay, we have a motion on the table.
Close it.
Okay, I'd like to close that motion. Do I have a second?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
You close the public hearing.
Oh, yes, I closed public hearing, I forgot. All right, now, let me just read it. May I have a motion and a second to either approve or deny the rezoning request after the expiration of the required 24-hour comment period and to adopt the resolution on statement of consistency?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Elliott?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Shell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shores?
Yes.
Commissioner Toole?
Yes.
Chair Watford?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Congratulations. We're hoping that you have a successful.
Arden's been here for a long time.
Yes.
We expect to hold true to what we say.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. For the next item, this is a special use permit by Aaron Davis in the Conrad Hill Township. There's been a request by the Planning Department to continue this matter to August the 24th. Mr. Davis is trying to pull together Health Department information to strengthen the application, and continuing the hearing will prevent Planning and Zoning from needing to re-advertise the legal notice. May I have a motion and a second to continue this item to August the 24th?
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Elliott?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Shell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shores?
Yes.
Commissioner True?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. That vote, motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. We appreciate the information
Thank
and
you,
the
Mr.
help.
Leonard. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Madam Chair, before Mr. Leonard leaves, I have just one quick point with regards to his zoning, and Chuck needs to, is there any, should we, in the future, when we approve, an application such as we just went through, should we, also in our motion, make it so that, they have to comply, that the motion is granted, is made basically, following the state stormwater policies. And if they don't comply with that, do we not have any leeway back? Hey, do you understand what I'm trying to say, Chuck?
Yes, sir, I think so. Scott, you want to have first bite?
Sure. It is the law that they have to comply with the state erosion control and stormwater, so it certainly would not hurt to make that into the motion, but we can't, well, when I say that if you're saying that you wanted in the motion that they have to comply with all stormwater and erosion control permits, I have no problem with that because it just allows us to utilize maybe the building permit side. If they don't comply with it, or if there's a notice of violation, we can stop the building permit process. But if the board chooses not to include it in their motion, we still monitor that, and the state they still have to do it whether we make it in the motion or not, but there's nothing wrong with accentuating that by put it in the motion.
Except that it may create an expectation that if they don't comply, that somehow the zoning would be revoked.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's exactly what I was thinking, Chuck.
Yes.
Exactly. You put it in better words than I ever could.
I mean, that's in essence what I was asking, and I guess I misunderstood. If we could, when you said we couldn't make it more stringent, but you're saying we.
I don't think we can revoke it. I think what it does is implies to the developer, when they hear you do that, they leave here thinking, we got to do this, or they'll pull our permit, or they'll pull the zoning. I don't think legally we could. Once we rezone it, I think it's done, but it's more of an implication.
I don't want to get into empty threats either, because if we get put in a situation where we need to, then we're caught with our pants down. So can we put in the ordinance, can we change the ordinance that it would have to reflect the same things that the state says? Could we do that?
We can add anything you want to in the ordinance, and I say that.
There's no need in adding it if it's not got teeth.
There's no need to add it if the state says you gotta comply.
Yeah, I think it's already there.
Okay.
Not in words, but I think that, like the engineer would lose his license if he don't comply with the state. When if he doesn't produce what the state requires, they can pull his license. So he's bound when he signs his license. I mean, he's bound to comply with state regulations. So I don't think adding it into the ordinance will make it any more predominant in the minds of the engineer.
It may be, it may be helpful to Scott and his staff if the board would indicate a general expectation from the Board of Commissioners that when you are presented with these plans, that it would be your expectation there would be a stormwater plan presented with that. Now, we heard some pushback from the developer tonight indicating he didn't want to have that sort of financial obligation, but yet at the same time, as soon as there's a problem, you're the ones who are going to be presented with.
That's exactly right, Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I'm kind of hearing is we either need to do a stormwater ordinance or just
Instead of that, I think that instead of getting involved with a full-blown stormwater program or even a separate ordinance, I think what I'm hearing is if we could add to the MXR section of the ordinance that when the submittals, what you have to submit to us, now it's basically just a master site plan. But if we include in that a stormwater plan, it will require engineering and cost. But if that's the direction of this board, we'll put it in there, and they know if they're going to apply for an MXR in front of this board, they have to supply that. Now, that will, I don't know what all that will include with the engineer, but it will at least be something that the board will look and see that, hey, we can show you by our engineering that we're going to take care of the stormwater, instead of just having someone say, the state's going to make us do it, and we'll do it.
Madam Clerk, does that need to be a motion, or does that need to be consensus?
Oh, that's changing the ordinance.
Yeah, that'll be a text amendment, and we will look into that and bring to you a text amendment and see if you want to do it.
Madam Chair, I'd like to see that happen then.
Well,
that's up to y'all, obviously, but.
Let's let the planning department, do the wording.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
And the verbiage and pass it by Chuck.
Absolutely.
And then bring it back to us at a later date.
And at that later time, I will have contacted the state to see what's included in that plan and let you know. So, and I'll even talk to an engineer who's not involved with this one to kind of get a cost involved. So I'll bring back more information to you. So
Absolutely.
you can decide.
Yeah, I'd like the cost as well, because we need to know that too.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just one thing to remember, though. We keep talking about the cost to the contractors and all that. What about the poor old guy living downstream that the contractor don't do what he's supposed to do? And his basement's flooded, his yard's flooded. What about the cost to him? You can't just look at it on one level. It affects a lot of different people. And so we need to do what's best for all of our citizens, not just these contractors. It's not all about money. It's about making sure these people feel secure in their homes and that their kids can play in the yard and not in the floodplain. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
When you're looking at that, Scott, keep that in mind as well. We're not only there to serve the people who are making an application. We're there to also serve the ones that the application will have an effect on.
Yes, sir. I understand.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Shell. Thank you, Scott. All right, let's go on to the public hearing on fire and life safety ordinance update. I declare the public hearing open. Mr. Leonard and Mr. Shunk will lead this off.
Luckily for me, I only have to introduce them, because I don't know a thing about it. It needed to go through the planning board process because it deals with land use issues, and now the planning board did approve it, and now Danny Ward and Chris Schock are going to talk about this plan before you.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good evening.
We are here, first we'd like to thank you for allowing us to present our fire and life safety ordinance. This document has been worked on for quite an extensive period of time, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 2+ years, and we're pretty proud of this document. We think that it's helped us to help ourselves, help our county, our citizens, saving money, helping with dealing with inspection problems and things of that nature. So a couple of reasons for the rewrite of the ordinance. Number one is we had to bring the ordinance into compliance with 160D, which is the land development use laws, the new laws that have been implemented this year. And the second reason is updating the ordinance to comply with the current code cycles of today. The current ordinance that's in place right now, it was written in 2005, and the code cycles have changed quite extensively over those last 16 years. So it was kind of a necessity to rewrite the ordinance to fit those new code cycles. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just give a brief synopsis, and a brief overview of the ordinance itself, and then take any questions that you may have. It's comprised of 10 articles. Article 1 basically is the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and it grants the authority of the fire marshal, as defined by general statutes, to to enforce the ordinance. It defines the terms used in the document and defines the limits of jurisdictional boundaries. Article 2 defines the duties of the fire marshal, authorizes the fire marshal to administer and enforce this ordinance and building code pursuant to statutory law. It outlines, it grants the right to enter for purpose of inspection in pursuant with statutory law, and also grants the right to respond and to mitigate emergency situations within our jurisdictional boundaries. Article 3 is the adoption of the North Carolina State Building Codes and the reference standards. The first 3 articles are pretty much in line with the current ordinance as it sits today. There's been some few minute changes to some of the language, but most of it's pretty much the same concept. Article 4 is a new portion of it, the commercial building plan review and permitting process. This is a new portion to the ordinance, but it is not new to how we do business. It pretty much is the way we do business today. But the only difference is now it's been laid down on paper. The current ordinance that's in place now is kind of vague and doesn't really give any procedural or outline or guidelines for us to follow, or anyone else as well. Article 5 and 6 is new, but they're old. They were part of the old ordinance, the current ordinance, but they've been kind of split into 2. And Article 5 is speaking to the inspections of existing buildings, and it explains the necessity of inspection of existing buildings pursuant to statutory law, and grants the fire marshal the ability to inspect, issue notice of violation, and issue civil penalties for noncompliance. It also details the responsible parties and who is responsible for repairing those violations. Article 6 is the enforcement procedures. This portion has changed pretty significantly. That part I would like to speak a little bit more about. I'm sure there may be some questions about that, but we'll hold that for now. Article 7 is the protection features for new buildings. I'd also like to speak a little bit about that because that one's new. Article 8, 9, and 10 get into the legal provisions of it. If there's questions about that, I'm going to have to yield to Danny or the county attorney for that. So, any questions?
Go ahead and expound on the one you're going to expound.
Go ahead.
Article 6?
Enforcement, wasn't that the first one?
All right. Okay, so enforcement. The current ordinance gives us the authority to inspect a building, and when we find violation, regardless of what the violation or the level, if you will, of the violation, everything is the same. The bottom line is we issue a notice of violation, we go back in 30 days. Every single building is going to have a violation, and what happens there, as you can see, if we go back in 30 days, it's going to continue to compound and compound and compound. That creates a burden on us. It also creates more taxpayer money being spent for us running around chasing violations that are, if you will, insignificant. What we have created is a way to for a occupant or responsible party to be able to give what we call self-certification. Through our inspection program, they can actually contact us through that. It sends an email automatically to us that they've fixed their violation, and we don't have to go back out there for that. So the majority of the violations that we find, we can do what we call self-certification, and that's a great thing. There is a couple that what is outlined in the fire code known as an unsafe condition, basically speaking of inadequate means of egress, inadequate occupancy or inadequate maintenance of fire and life safety systems that require us to act in a different way. So what we've done is we've used that same concept of going back 30 days and then 15 days and issuing civil penalties and such in that portion for just unsafe conditions because it's a life safety hazard. The others, they still could come to a civil penalty, but most places those are easy violations. Most occupants will fix them and self-certify. And it may be just a phone call that they give us. Somebody calls me on the phone and tells me I fixed my fire extinguisher. They fix the fire extinguisher. They're not calling to lie to me, you know. So so that's the main big change on that. One of the others is what we are considering a imminent danger or an imminent threat of danger. If we find an imminent danger or a threat of danger, so this is something that is immediately going to cause a harm or personal injury to someone, we have a different way to act on that. Now, this may come down to us having to evacuate the building. This is a very rare case. Okay, this is something like this. They've got ammonium nitrate sitting next to the heater here. Okay, this is something like, you know, it's imminently is going to happen. That's one set of it. The other is if they have a unsafe condition, then they can give us what they call a plan of action. If we have an unsafe condition such as a means of egress that's not correct, they can give us a plan of action. Hey, we're going to fix this in this amount of days, because sometimes they will not have the ability to fix it immediately. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we can take a plan of action from them, which they'll give us a set guideline of how long it's going to take them to fix it, and we'll use that.
Okay. Is that all for that enforcement? Yes. Okay.
You said there was another one you were going to talk about a little bit?
Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is kind of new. These are fire protection service features for commercial buildings, okay? Key boxes for emergency entry is the first one. The fire department is required by law to investigate any fire. So if you have a building that has a automatic means of contacting the fire department, in other words, a fire alarm or a water flow alarm for a sprinkler system, the fire department has to be able to investigate that call. So what we're requiring is buildings that have the new construction buildings that are being constructed now or being moved into or changing use. If they have an automatic means for contacting the fire department, we're requiring them to have a key box or whatever means that the fire department is suitable to them to gain entry into the building after hours when no one is there to investigate that fire. That's one point. Fire hydrants. The fire code requires a approved water supply, but not necessarily a fire hydrant. So in our county, there's some areas that will not have the ability to have a fire hydrant. A good example of that would be New Highway 109. There's a good portion of New Highway 109 that does not have any water lines down there. And we have a building that's being built that's maybe a $90,000 building, and to get a fire hydrant in there to meet the code, which is within 400 feet, it's going to cost them quite a bit of money to get if Davidson Water will even run the line down there. Right. So that's the other thing. The Davidson Water, being a private purveyor, they hold the cards on that. Sometimes, and we've had this situation come up where we've required a fire hydrant, and Davidson Water does us a good service. They actually will share the cost of installing a hydrant, which is $3,000, and that's relatively cheap, from my understanding, to install a hydrant. They'll share that cost if a hydrant is more than 1,000 feet from a building. So we've had that situation pop up where we've required them to put in a hydrant. Everything was set, and Davidson Water decided they didn't want to put it there because it's not going to benefit them. So now where they're going to put it is not going to benefit the purpose of putting it there. So I cut the requirement for that, because now it's no longer helping my building occupant, even though it is helping Davidson Water, but nonetheless. So just to give you some scenarios of how that would go. So the requirement for a fire hydrant is if you have more than 1,000 feet from a hydrant to a building. One of the reasons for that is a fire truck is required to carry 1,000 feet of a 4-inch hose or large diameter hose, supply hose, and that's a pretty good distance. So that's basically where we're leaving it at that. So we kind of give it as every case by case. Every situation is different. There's no way to be able to nail it down one way or the other. So what we're requiring them to have is a required water supply. Now we can do that through a hydrant, or we can do that through tankers. There's several different means that we can do that. Worst case scenario is if you have a building that has needs a fire pump or needs sprinklers, and you have to have a tank put in. So it's case by case with the water supply. Posting of occupant load, one of the other things that we're real strong on is posting an occupant load in any building that is required, that is classified as an assembly. That is the little occupant load sticker that you see outside the door that tells you how many people can be in this building. So any building that is an assembly occupancy, i.e. these are churches, these are courtrooms, these are restaurants, anywhere where there are a large gathering of people could be, we make them post an occupant load. We provide that to them, so at no cost, we just require that they put it up. Fire department connections. Fire departments these days are set up to utilize the LDH hose, the large diameter hose, and you may have seen these connections on the sides of buildings, and there are 2 outlets like so, and that's kind of an older method of doing it. These days the fire departments are set up to use large diameter hose, so we recommend that they put in a large diameter hose. However, if it is a sprinkler building with a demand that is higher than 0.25 over 2,500, nobody knows what I'm talking about, but if it's a certain amount of demand required by that sprinkler system that's going to require more water, we require them to put the large diameter hose so that the fire department can provide that amount of water adequately. And that's pretty much it for that. The chapter, or Article 4, excuse me.
Can I ask you a question
yes,
about
sir.
that?
About which one, sir?
The last one you spoke to. The insurance companies will give a better rate for buildings that are in a, 6? That we have some areas that's in 10, and their insurance is rather expensive. Is there any way, whenever you do something like this, of letting the insurance company know that there is water there?
So when the water actually becomes available to a homeowner or a business, we don't actually contact the insurance company. However, we recommend that property owner do that once the hydrant is established or the water supply. Is that what you're asking? Is how do we refer that information?
Yeah, because we don't have many in a 10 anymore, but there are some.
Yeah, there are still a few out there who are in a 10 area. Unfortunately, some of them, until the county grows by leaps and bounds, are unhelpable. But we have something separate from this occurring that I'm working with GIS on to help folks that are in a 9 or maybe in a 10 to come into a lower classification, such as a 6 or 5 or 4, however it turns out, whichever way the fire department's rated.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, sir, you're fine.
Stop there. I'm going to ask one question too.
Absolutely.
When we talk about these fire and safety regulations, do they cover all the cities also, don't they?
Do they cover the cities?
Yeah.
Just the county. This is just for the county.
So not a city in the county, it doesn't cover any of that.
Mm-mm.
City of Lexington does have to follow these.
They would have their own.
Okay.
Yeah, they have their own jurisdiction. Yes.
But you're the fire marshal for the entire county, though, aren't you?
Just for the but there's 3 different jurisdictions within the county. We have the county jurisdiction, City of Lexington, and City of Thomasville.
Okay.
They are their own jurisdiction.
What about the other cities?
To add to that, we actually have more jurisdictions. But what he's referring to is the ones that we don't operate in which is High Point, Lexington, and Thomasville. However, we do operate within the boundaries of Walberg, Midway, and Denton.
Okay.
And that's more of a question I have to refer to Chuck. What authority do we have to extend that in there, or is it blanketed in with how we already are doing business?
That's a contractual relationship that we have with them, and
okay.
The other municipalities, yes.
So that was my question. If some cities, was it all the cities, but contractual? You're right. Okay.
Article 4, is the commercial plan review and, permitting, process. And as I said before, it's how we do business already is pretty much laid out in there, so nothing's changed. If there's any questions on anything in there, I'd be glad to answer, but, the current ordinance we have right now doesn't have a guideline or a procedural method for us to follow. So this is what we, over the years, have come up with, to follow. Works pretty good, but we felt it was important that we want to be able to have it in there so there, at least it's somewhere that somebody can look at it and say, you know, we're being fair.
I would like to comment on that. I've had multiple compliments on the fire marshal's office with the way that y'all handle plan reviews and helping people out, especially people that have no clue what, you know, how to read code or what they need to do. Y'all have actually helped them out a lot. I know by law we can't design it or tell them, but, you know, there's just certain times you have to have a little bit of humanity and help them, and y'all have done that above and beyond, so I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Public hearing.
All right, if not, I declare the public hearing closed. May I have a motion and a second to approve the updated fire and life safety ordinance?
One question.
Okay.
Mr. Fry, you've reviewed this?
Yes, sir. I have had the opportunity to work with these gentlemen for some period of time with this. We also, I don't know that we had shared this with the board, but we had hired a consultant who did at least the initial drafts of this document, and had an opportunity to develop or receive some expertise from outside of what we could bring to the table. And then we spent some time polishing that. They have spent the majority of the work on this, and they're to be commended for the document I think that they're bringing to the board tonight.
Also reviewed it with
We thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, one final thing. The county manager has reminded me that there has been the opportunity also to review this with the fire chiefs. We had a virtual meeting with the fire chiefs, and as a result of that discussion, some amendments were made. There was some back and forth on that, and I suspect that that meeting was helpful in not having more folks present tonight, because after we made those amendments, we distributed the revised draft. This is what we were calling draft 3, because this is the third draft that we have publicly presented. There have been many, many more drafts that have not been distributed, but I think we have reached consensus with this.
I commend you for that, because I understood that several of the chiefs had some serious concerns, and y'all worked through that. It's great. So, I declare the public hearing closed. May I have a motion and a second to approve the updated fire and life safety ordinance?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we, I'm sorry.
And also, Mr. Leonard handed me a resolution on statement of consistency that I wasn't aware existed until this evening. So we need to adopt that as well, if you're okay with that.
Okay, okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the fire and life safety, policy.
We have a motion from Commissioner Shores.
A second, with the
And we
statement
have
of consistency.
and from Commissioner Elliott as well. We'll have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Elliott.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner McCord.
Yeah.
Commissioner Shell.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Shores.
Yes.
Commissioner Truill.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, although this vote carries, or the motion carries by a vote of 6-0, considering that Mr. Yates never made it to the meeting, we're gonna need to put this on the June 22nd agenda for a second reading and approval.
Yes, because we have to have a
unanimous vote.
unanimous vote. So,
Thank you all and good evening.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, may I have a motion and a second to go into closed session for matters of attorney-client?
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Fry, would you like for us to move in
don't even understand what I'm saying. I got a dang tooth that's giving me a fit.
Give us a report.
You can hear really well. Okay, we're good.
May I have a motion and a second to return to open session?
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. We'll do a roll call vote.
Or we just say
Wait a minute, okay.
the objection.
Have to do what Ms.
Commissioner
Harris
Elliott.
said.
Yeah.
Commissioner McClure.
Yes.
Commissioner Shell.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Shores.
Yes.
Commissioner Truul.
Yes.
Chair Watford.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Mr. Fry, please provide a report.
Madam Chair, in closed session, the board received information from council with regard to the status of the pending litigation in the national opioid litigation. No formal action was taken by the board. Thank you.
May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
And a second. Do we need to do a roll call?
Yes, ma'am.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Elliott.
Nobody's gonna vote against this.
Commissioner McClure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Commissioner Shell. Commissioner Shores.
Yes.
Commissioner Truul.
Yes.
Chair Watford.
Yes.
Thank you.